so good to have you all here. Thank you for joining us. And Merry Christmas to all of you. Good to have you here. I was thinking about what to share tonight, especially because of the kind of year we've been through. And I don't know about you, but when I was thinking about coming here and celebrating the birth of Jesus, I got all excited this week. It's like, man, we have so much to celebrate. So what I want to do in my talk is I want to take you back to the world that Jesus was born into. Now, if you those of you who know what the writers of Scripture, they did word pictures to try to set up something to give us some idea what the world was like that Jesus walked into. And one of those, I'm going to just talk about one of them. One of them was this. It was a time of great darkness. And it describes it this way. It says they were sitting in darkness, they were walking in darkness, and they were living in darkness. As I think about that, I think about there's probably at least 4 levels of darkness, and that was part of their lives. First of all, there was political darkness. Now, if you know anything about that, the time when the Romans were ruling the world, and the Jews were not particularly excited about it. So there was this political darkness where the Jews, in their minds, God's people had lost freedom. They were controlled by another nation, and so as this darkness kind of descended on them, there was this loss of freedom, and if you read the stories of that time, it worked its way out in a lot of interesting ways. It was extreme poverty. There was just a lot of things going on. But one of the ways that the people began to then think about that darkness is that the way we get out of this darkness is overthrow Rome. We will find light the minute Rome is no longer in charge. And so that became a bit of a focus. The second darkness was spiritual darkness. Man, Jesus came into a dark spiritual situation. He was born into a world that was spiritually so dark. As the darkness kind of settled into that culture, there was a loss of relationship with God. And whenever there's a loss of relationship with God, what it gets replaced by is rule keeping. And so in this darkness, it wasn't that the people gave up on God. It wasn't that they ignored God. It wasn't that they didn't show up at the house of God. It wasn't any of that. It's that everything had just kind of been reduced to this. If I do this and this and this, and if I keep all of these rules, there'll be light. You talk about darkness. It doesn't get any darker than when your journey with God is a list of rules. Third darkness was there was moral darkness. And if you know anything about that culture, on the one hand, it seems like it's almost shocking to think about them having moral darkness in their culture, but it was a morally dark culture. When I was over there, this feels like a lifetime ago when I was younger, our guide talked about what was going on in the leadership, in the priest, not the governmental leadership, the religious leadership. It was morally corrupt at a level that was stunning. And so when darkness settles into the moral fiber of who you are, what happens is now you're forced to hide and pretend. And that's what they did. And so they'd go through the motions, and the darkness was not the hope for light. Let me say it this way. The hope for light was not, will I ever find victory in my addictions? Will I ever find light in my journey? It was, if no one knows about it, it's okay. And so the pretending and the hiding went on, just trapped in darkness. The last one was personal darkness. And it was, I will call this just a loss of peace. They just went through the motions of life, hoping that maybe something would change, hoping that out there somewhere there was something worth living for. That was the world Jesus was born into. That was the reason he came, because it is, when I describe that, I hope you connect that with our culture. Because we've become a culture that has political darkness, spiritual darkness, moral darkness, personal. Man, we need Jesus this Christmas season. Now, I want to go to then, if on the one hand, the one human description of human condition was this thing of darkness, then by definition, one of the descriptions of Jesus when he comes into the manger, when he comes into our world, is going to be he's a person of light. Because if there's darkness, then by definition, the only way those people eventually, the only way a culture or a world escapes the darkness is if light comes into that world. So the other night, and I was thinking about this image of light, and the one picture in the story, and it's not that was read tonight, this particular one, but the one image of light was the star. And so the other day I was at work, and I was working by myself in this house, and I had this Christian station on, and it was playing Christmas music, and I was trying to get all psyched up, because this Christmas season has been, man, it's been one of those that's had a lot of reasons not to be psyched up. So I'm like, maybe if I turn on some Christmas. Yeah. Have you tried that? After a while, it's like, how many times can I listen to this stuff? Anyhow, the lady that was at the radio station was saying, hey, the Christmas star is going to be in the sky tonight. You need to look at it. I'm like, really? So I drove home, and I said, hey, did you guys hear? The Christmas star's out there. We should go look at it. And the thing that caught my attention was, it was 800 years ago, the last time this particular thing happened. And she was saying that Christian theologians think that this is what the wise men saw. So Tish and I walk out on the porch, and we're looking at it. And the thing that struck me is like, you guys followed that? Did anybody else think that? It's like, you got to be kidding me. That's what you saw. Now, it may or may not have been. But one of the reasons I wanted to see it is I just did the math, and I'm like, I probably won't be around if it's 800 years till this shows up again. I better go look at this. Light. Now here's the interesting part of this, and this comes from church historians and theologians, so this isn't my thing especially, but I find it interesting. If that was the Christmas star that we saw the other night, they estimate that thing's 77 light years away. So if that's true, let's just pray. Let's just play it, because I think we see a picture of God in this that's really, really cool, and I hope we get this Christmas season. If that's true, then 77 years before the wise men saw that star, God put it in motion. He was way ahead of the curve. He was doing something in the darkness. He was sending light toward the darkness before anybody knew it was coming, when no one would have recognized it. Long before it was on its way. Aren't you so thankful tonight that our Jesus had light coming your way long before you had any idea it was anywhere around? It was headed your way. That's my Jesus. That's the Jesus that was born in the manger. When you were still trapped in your mess, thought there was no way out, light was on its way. for years already it was headed your way. The other thing I want to say about light, and then I'll wrap up the talk, is just this. And this comes from church historians. As they celebrated, this is centuries ago, as they celebrated this birth of Jesus, they would do it kind of like we do it. We're going to do it in a minute here. We'd have lights. And one of the reasons that was so important to them is just, first of all, that Jesus, the whole concept of Jesus coming into a dark world. But as they held the lights, it had two ideas associated with it. The first idea is this: I can have a candle, but unless somebody lights this candle, unless I receive the light, I just have a candle. And so as they celebrated the birth of Jesus, and as we celebrate the birth of Jesus, remember this. He's given you a light. He's given you a life. He's given you a body. He's given you a mind. He's given you all of this stuff, these things to work with, these gifts to you. But unless he lights it, unless you receive the light of his presence into your heart, it's just a candle. The second idea that was associated when they thought about, by the way, I'm just going to do a little rabbit trail. Aren't you glad he came before there was LED lights? Because we wouldn't have had this image. The second idea that was associated with it, the birth of Jesus, not only did he come to bring light into my darkness and light my candle. In that culture, once your candle was lit, you lit the next person's. See, the story of Jesus isn't just for us to get all excited about it, because he's come into our hearts and redeemed us and saved us and given us hope and peace and given us a possibility of having spiritual freedom, of having moral victories, of having personal peace. As great as all that is, one of the key points of the story is that we take our candle over to the next person and say, I want to help you light your light. I want to be part of you. Because we must, in a dark, dark culture, which is exactly what America has become, we must be people who take this story, say, you got to listen to this story, and reach out with our candles, say, I'll help you light yours. I'm going to ask the worship team to come, and then I'm also going to ask the guys the people who are going to light the candles for us. What they're going to do is they're going to come around, they'll light a candle, and if you're at the end of the row, just make sure everyone in your row, just pass it down. But this Christmas season, the hope and the joy of this Christmas season to me is that I can live in freedom because Jesus came into my world. Go ahead, you could start lighting the candles while I wrap this up. I can live in victory because Jesus came into my world. I can live with joy because he came in the world, and most of all, I can live in with peace because he came into our world. And let's spread those ideas through our valley. Tomorrow, as you're out and about, the next day, take the story and light everyone else's candle.